It's Paul. It's Paul. It's Paul. Fuck it. It's Paul. Listen. There's only so much I can explain. It's Paul. Listen. I just gotta be honest with you. Paul. I just gotta be honest with you. Paul. You gotta be fucking kidding me.
This is the Paul Pod. We are live. Well, we're recorded, but we're talking live with a very special individual today. More conversations with the conspirators with Eminem for the creation of the material that embodies Curtain Call 2, his second greatest hits installment. Today, with us, we have the extraordinary talent, directorial force, James Larese, ladies and gentlemen.
What up? How's it going?
Hey, James. How are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful, Paul. How you doing, man?
I am fantastic. Where are you joining us live from today?
I am in beautiful, non-humid Southern California, Hollywood, right in the middle, at my boy's studio, and I'm happy to be here. I say no humidity because I currently live in New York, and it is the bane of my existence. The weather.
It gets pretty bad. It gets pretty bad, I admit. So James is a director, primarily known as a music video director. However, does more than just that. So I don't want to limit his talents, but certainly how we came to meet James.
Mm-hmm.
James has worked with Eminem on 12 different official singles as music video director. And then he's worked with Marshall on, looks like 6 different feature videos with Marshall as the featured artist. And then you've done several other things with us, which we'll get into later, including Slaughterhouse videos, Yellow Wolf video, interviews and live performances and commercials and all sorts of fun stuff. But let's start at the beginning, okay? So,
Perfect.
The year is 2009 or so, and we are working on putting together visuals for the Relapse album.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things we were going to shoot was Crack a Bottle, right?
Yep.
And that was before 3 a.m.?
It was before 3 a.m., yeah.
Okay, so that's the first thing that we had contact with you about.
Correct.
And that there's a bit of irony in that, which we'll get into in a moment. But you had a real challenge in creating this music video. But before we even get into that, do you recall what led you to us or to working with Marshall in the first place?
Yes. Well, from my perspective, and this, I just know like what reps and, everyone was telling me at the time. But at that time, from my perspective, you guys were messing heavy with Saline Project, who were a design directive collective and directing
Correct.
collective in like the early 2000s and whatnot. And
yeah, and they had the computer animated design and motion
Yeah.
graphic department built in, and a couple creative guys that worked in tandem. Correct.
That's right. And they did like Toy Soldiers, and they were going heavy in like the early 2000s with all of Marshall's visuals, and
Right.
they were sick. Like they were great. You know what I mean? And there was no one else really like them out there. And then me and my crew at the time, I was part of a collective called Syndrome, and we come from more street art and gallery scenes and mixed media projects and stuff like that. So we really started getting heavy into motion graphics, and that's kind of what led us into music videos and whatnot. And we were repped by the same rep, Robin Frank. And so
There
I
we
think
go.
they had I guess they were up for it, or they had a concept and they just couldn't hit a number. And so
You mean for the Crack a Bottle video?
yeah, I think so. I think the story was like they couldn't get the numbers right, which is the case so many times, right? And so they couldn't make their idea work for whatever the number was. And so then I think Robin, being the you know, the rep extraordinaire that she is, she slid us in. It's like, well, here, try Syndrome. And so, you know, it was like a huge budget for us. So
Right.
we were just starting out, you know, and it's like we were trying to find our lane because they had like that photorealistic, you know, visual on lock that was, you know, green screen, and they were doing their thing, and you kind of knew what you were getting from them, and it was always going to be quality. So we needed to do, you know, we had to do us, and that was actually the earliest lesson of like staying true to yourself, you know, and not trying to be like anybody else. And so that's how Crock the Bottle came to be. I think it was, you know, we were able to make it work. Classic story of like sliding in, you know, for the opportunity, and, you know, and just trying our hardest to deliver.
So you're enlisted to do a treatment for this music video for this song, Crack a Bottle, which has Eminem, not just Eminem, but 50
Right.
Cent and Dr. Dre.
That's right.
Right? So
Yes.
you're looking at it going, oh my God, what a dream to work with these guys. But you're told, hey, these guys aren't available. They're for one reason or another. You have to do a music video without them.
Correct.
And so what runs through your mind at that point? Because I would probably just be like, how am I supposed to do this? What happened to you?
Well, I mean, ignorance is bliss, you know, especially early on in this game of music video directing. Like, if you don't believe in yourself, like, you're not gonna last. So we had this like false courage and confidence that, you know, fuck yeah, we could do this, like, no problem, you know. So without the talent, you know, years later, I come to realize when there's not talent in a video, it makes me nervous because you have to fill all this time with other things to keep the 3.5 minutes or however long it is interesting.
Absolutely.
But at the time, we were like, oh, dude, it's no big deal because we were used to doing a lot of experimental animation and motion projects that didn't have any talent, you know, so we relied heavy on, you know, smoke and mirrors and cool effects and, you know, stuff like that. So we just thought it'd be easy, you know, and so I guess when I heard the song, I forget how I heard that song. I can tell you how I heard many other songs, but that one.
Well, I guarantee you somebody came to play it for you.
Oh,
right?
I know what it was. Neil met me in a Staples parking lot. It was
So
like
there
a
you
drug.
go. Like I said, somebody came to play it for you. Because at the time, there was so much music hacking going on that we weren't releasing music into anybody's hands for any purpose, let alone some video collective we haven't worked with before, right? So
That's right.
So Neil shows up. Neil being the Alchemist's brother, who's a dear friend of ours. Neil shows up in the parking lot, like, "Yo, we're gonna play you this song, bro." And you hear the song and you're like, "Wow, this is awesome." But then you got to walk away remembering what you could remember or whatever notes you took because you didn't have a copy,
That's right? That's right.
So then you got to write a treatment.
That's right. So the image that came to mind was, I don't know why, but I was like, the energy of the song, because it's definitely lighter Eminem, and he's kind of going off. And this is, I believe it was a time, you know, he had just gone through everything, and this was kind of like the first like big look coming out, or first music people have heard from him for a minute, and obviously with Dre and 50. So the idea was, if they're not going to be represented, we need to have some sort of image that represents them, or a character that represents each one of them. So it really started out with, like, you know, Crack a Bottle, you know, what can we do? And we started playing around with ideas of, like, well, what if it's a 40 ounce that opens up and it's like a dollhouse, and instead of, like, you know, the little rooms in a Barbie dream house, it's like an apartment complex, and the bottom floor is Marshall, and the middle floor is Dre, and then the top floor is 50, and we just kind of travel up through this bottle. And the reason it opens up and all this is because this homeless lady, who's, you know, it's a very like stereotypical like wino type character who is on the street.
Yeah, like a bag lady.
Like a bag lady, exactly.
Right.
And she, it's really kind of, I guess, through her perspective, like she's drunk or crazy or whatever, and so she sees the bottle happening. We did this cool little like stop motion thing where the bag on the bottle falls off, and then the bottle opens up, and we kind of see it from her perspective, like, you know, just tripping out that this bottle is coming to life. So that was fun,
right?
And that
so
was
it was
kind
almost
of
like
the starting point.
this like miniatures, like world of miniatures, happening within this bottle that was like a dollhouse with different levels.
Yeah.
And so much of it was done with post work, but there was also, once you got into the rooms, it was live action
That's
filmed with actors, etc.
That's correct.
Right.
And that was something that we had been dabbling with because, again, trying to find our own lane, it was, the mixture of, creating these three-dimensional worlds that had a style, but it revolved around live action or performance or, the artist or something like that. So that was something that we were really into at the time. So, yeah, we shot the lady. She was... we shot her live. That was practical. And then the bottle, it was a real bottle, but then we enhanced it in VFX. And then once you got into the rooms, each one of these apartments, then it was...
Wait, what do you mean it was a real bottle?
Scene. The bottle itself was a 40. You know what I mean? It was just like a 40 with a bag around it. Oh, you mean you
used the real glass bottle as the model?
Yeah. We used the real glass bottle, and then we enhanced it from there. So the bottle's not 3D, but we just started, a lot of it was like stop motion and just fun stuff we would do like at our studio.
Sure.
Like tricks.
And how many days of shooting did that take?
That was one day. Yeah.
Okay, so one day, and that includes being on set, or that's just one day of you doing all the work in the studio?
Oh no. Yeah, one day of shooting. So the actual shoot was one day. We shot at a warehouse in downtown LA. And then I think the post, like the VFX from the edit on, was probably, I don't know, maybe a month max, maybe 3 weeks, or something like that, to turn around the whole thing.
So you put in all the work, you do the shoot, you spend the money, you do the edits, you get the notes, you get it to a point where you're feeling good about it, and you think everything's moving forward, and then what happens?
We deliver it, and then... I never heard anything about it. Like I don't know if it was ever fully released, or I know the song was out, but I don't know. See, it's 2009, so there's no social media, there's no like Twitter, there's no any sort of internet. So it's like you're heavy relying on the networks, right? It's MTV, I guess, like MTV Jams, maybe BET, all these things. So you figure it's M50 and Dre, like that shit should be everywhere. You know what I mean? And it kind of just, it just was. I don't quite know. Maybe it was released in sections or something like that. But in any case, we were just happy to get through it, and it seemed like everyone was happy with it. So to us, that was like a mission accomplished. Maybe we can live to see another day.
Right. So I think it was never officially fully released. Right.
Right.
So there is versions of it that are out there now that are like unofficially released versions.
Yeah.
But we never officially fully released it. And the reason is the most ironic part, right? So we do this video, we try to do the workaround, we come up with this, creative idea with you. We get you guys, to shoot it, spend all the time that you need to edit it and to do the post work on it, give you the resources necessary to make something we thought would be great. And because it was the sort of return of Marshall into the market in a way, right? Because he had been away for a minute, it felt like putting that video out without him in it would send the wrong message.
Right.
Right? After seeing it, we look at it and we go, wait a minute, what are we telling the fans? Right? And what are we telling the audience if we're putting out this video with the first time that Marshall's, coming back onto the scene after, going through his rehab, et cetera, and he's not in the video.
Right.
So we put a pin in it and decided that we would maybe do something with it later. Here we are, 15 years later, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And we are releasing the video officially now.
Amazing.
This
Fucking
week.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah, because now it's like we've got the story to tell, we've got the context, and nobody's going to go, oh, why isn't Eminem in it? They're just going to go, oh, this is cool. We've never seen this before, right?
Yeah.
Or hopefully they'll do that. So
exactly.
So that's what we're doing now. But there's a silver lining, obviously, to all of this, because although you didn't get to work with Marshall directly, you got familiar with the crew. You started, to work with myself, and other opportunities arose.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was the beginning, and it's a crazy ass ride, man, for sure.
Listen, I just gotta be honest with you.
so that leads into what is a sort of important record from the Relapse album, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think 3 a.m. is the first time that you worked with Marshall in person. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right.
Also my first time to Detroit.
Oh, wow. All right. So you come to Detroit, you write the treatment, you come to Detroit, you're set, ready to go. I know you talked to me a couple times. You probably spoke to Marshall on the phone in that process, right?
That's right. That's right.
And
he had one thing. He just, all he requested was that at some point he was in a bloodbath.
right. Literally a tub filled with blood.
That's right.
Which we definitely delivered.
That's right.
So you get to Detroit, you spoke to Marshall a couple times, you come onto the set, and I know this was one of many, many experiences filming in Detroit in less than an ideal environment. Right?
This might have been the worst. Day one might have been the worst.
And when I say that, I mean that, you know, it's either cold or it's raining or it's late or we're in the middle of nowhere or we're in a crumbling building or, you know, there's no toilets. Like, it's never like a Pharrell video where you're filming on a beach somewhere, right? Ever.
No.
We never film in like beautiful locations where, you know, there's like, you know, something else to be desired outside of the work that you're doing. It's like
I know.
we might as well, you know, be off in Siberia, right?
That's right.
So we're filming this video, and 3 a.m. a lot of it was filmed outside in the woods. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't filmed in the woods, it was in a insane asylum.
A real insane asylum. Yes.
Like an actual defunct insane asylum, which, you know, is likely haunted. If you believe in that stuff, it's definitely haunted.
But there was also a still active wing where we had to be very careful because there were people that stayed in one particular wing, and so we couldn't be too loud in that area because it would freak them out, you know. So yeah, that was definitely real.
Right. So we're filming in the woods. We're filming in an insane asylum, and you get to meet Marshall. And tell me what, you know. It's probably hard to remember, and you know, I know this is a really sort of
I remember
journalistic style question, but what was that like when you first met him?
The most surreal experience. I mean, I've had a lot since, and I had a couple before, but it was probably the most surreal, like, celebrity experience I've ever had. Like meeting somebody that's in the public eye or someone that I really admired or you know, was a big fan of. You know, so it was a 2-day shoot. The first day was in the woods. The second day was at this insane asylum, as we were talking about. And so the first day, we had a motorhome for him. And to kind of paint the picture, we were way outside of Detroit. Like we were deep in the woods. And it was like kind of like a horror movie, which was kind of the point, right? So, and it was on some guy's farm, and it was pouring rain. And there was no concrete.
And cold.
Yeah, and cold. I mean, it was just like, and it was my first time to Detroit, so I'm coming from LA. Like, I don't know what the hell was going on, and so we had all these kind of crazy conditions. So then there's a motorhome, and you know, at that point they're like, "Hey, man, come say hi to Marshall or whatever," and you know, my body just like it just got so tense at that moment. I was like, "Fuck, I'm about to actually go meet Marshall Mathers," and so I go into the trailer, and I remember. At the time, the wardrobe guy was, I guess, the wardrobe guy from 8 Mile. So he was like super, like, comes from the film world. And, you know, Marshall's just like in a dirty wife beater the whole time. But he had like 16 wife beaters that were all the same. It was crazy. Like he had it all kind of laid out. And then,
it was like Steve Jobs' closet. Like all the outfits were the same, but there was just 20 of them.
Yeah, or like when Dre, like he wears just like black Dickies every day. That's like his whole closet is that. And Air Force Ones. But so yeah, I walk in, I see that, and then Marshall comes in, and he just glared at me. He was just staring at me, like he never looked away. And he does this one thing with, I don't know which eye it is, but he has like kind of a squint on one eye, and he was just like looking at me, and it was that look of like, all right, you made it this far, like you've obviously fucked with us, you know, the fact that you're here shows that, you know, you've had a couple conversations with Paul. You obviously get it, but now it's like this is the boss level. You got to like face me. You know, it was like a video game almost. And so
So the squid was almost like the Larry David sort of.
Yeah, it was 100% that.
Right?
Exactly that.
Like really checking you out. Like, what's this?
But
guy
not
up
a
to?
glance.
Sizing you up. Sizing you up.
100% sizing me up, and not a glance. Like it was a stare. You know what I mean? So I was just like, all right. So when I get in that position, what gets me through those type of situations is just being prepared. You know what I mean? If I'm prepared and I know what we're doing inside and out, that gives me confidence that I can lean on. So no matter how I'm feeling as like a actual human being, I can put that to the side and just focus on the work. Because otherwise, if I lost thought, I was going to be fucked. He was probably going to throw me in the mud, you know? And so that's what I did. And I made it through that conversation. And so I was like, okay, here we go. You know, again, I was kind of going on ignorance is bliss. If I did that same shoot today, I'd be like, dude, we got to push until the weather gets better or something along those lines. But
yeah, well, I think, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think that he probably ended up respecting was the fact that you were just pushing forward regardless.
Yeah.
Right? Because one thing you know about him is he doesn't like to waste time.
No.
So he doesn't want to just sit around, and he doesn't want to just, you know, wait for things to get better. He wants to push forward.
Or not know, or if he does have to wait, he wants to know. There's got to be a reason. Like there has to be some sort of justification for like we have to wait on this shot or something like that. But if it's just like,
and if there is a reason, he wants to know how long he's going to be waiting.
A real answer of how long it'll be.
Yes, because the worst thing you can do is say you don't know how long he's going to have to be waiting. That's not a satisfactory answer for him. So
that's right.
So anyway, you guys, you know, you obviously passed the sort of initial sizing up, and for whatever reason, he gave you the extra stare down. He gave you the icy blue, or what's it called, blue steel.
The blue
steel,
right.
Total stare down, and he was sizing you up.
Yeah.
And you made it through. You made an incredible video. The one thing that I remember, aside from the stuff we already discussed, was when we did the bath of blood, it was really cold.
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
the water.
Freezing. Yeah. That's
because
right.
obviously it wasn't actual blood. And we tried to heat it up, I think, but it couldn't really get hot enough quick enough.
No.
And it was like he could only be in there for a short period of time because they thought he might get like worried about like hypothermia.
Yeah.
Right? Which can happen. It doesn't have to be freezing water. That can happen like, you know, with water in the 50s and 60 degree range, right?
That's right.
So he goes in the tub, and then I think that the last shot, he actually had to submerge himself completely. Right? Because just his eyes were peeking up above the water.
That's right.
Which, you know, you did a great job of capturing. So we shoot the 3 a.m. video. I think it turned out great. And what happens from there that you can remember?
I think at that point, you know, one thing I learned now, this being the second video and working with you guys, is that A, you don't overpromise, and B, what you do promise, you deliver on. Not only for the budget, but for the time, because there's always a schedule. There's always a rollout. There's always a bigger plan, and you're hip to like whatever your part of it is. So it's your job in part of the, you know, the Shady process to just make sure that those dates are hit and you deliver on what you promised. And I think we did with that one. You know, I was really proud of it. We were able to kind of bring our flavor to like what a horror film would be like or something. Which, you know, right after that, that's all we were getting is phone calls to do horror movies. But what was cool, I would say, with that video is that it has special premiere. Again, before internet, before, you know, Vivo and all that stuff, it was a big premiere. And I remember it was a big deal because it had never been done before. And that is, it premiered on Showtime right before the Strangers, that scary movie, The Strangers. And and I remember with that is like there was a website that was built that was kind of like a replica of the different rooms in 3 a.m. inside the insane asylum. So there was this great like thematic series and like a through line that kind of took this concept of him escaping, you know, the insane asylum and using, I guess we had GoPros at that point, but like using things for like surveillance camera and using that footage to carry over into the website. And, each week a new door would be unlocked, and, there was this all leading to this really cool premiere. And that was the first time I was like, oh shit, like they really take it beyond. It's not over when the song's done. Like that's just the beginning, and how it has life beyond that. That was so incredible to watch and to be a part of. And I think that was also something that I knew I wanted to do without knowing I wanted to do. I love carrying visuals across platforms and creating a campaign almost of stuff. So that took off. Then I remember from there, you guys were doing the Voodoo Festival or something like that. And then, so I did visuals. You asked me to put together like the stage visuals for that based on the video. And that was awesome, and things like that. I started getting the understanding of like, okay, this is kind of the pace of how things go. And as you need things, you'll reach out and all that stuff. And again, just like, your word is your bond, you know what I mean? And just delivering on that and being reliable and being a person that can be relied on. I realized how the strength of that, so I just have carried that on.
So then after the 3 a.m. video, the next thing was what?
Bad Meets Evil. Held the sequel.
So that's Fast Lane, which was one of the singles off of that EP. That was your first time working with Royce the 5'9" as well.
That's right. And the two of them together.
And back to Detroit.
This time I was a little bit more familiar. I understood, the lay of the land a little bit more. I was kind of getting a rhythm in Detroit and understanding how everything kind of rolled and worked and functioned and whatnot. So by the time we were doing Fast Lane, I felt pretty good, like we were in a pretty good position rhythmically. And it's like every conversation, except for Crack a Bottle, the initial conversation that I would have with Marshall, you would kind of give me like a nugget of like, look, we're trying to do something like this, and you'll give me like a sentence or two, and then it's like, do something, what are you going to do with this, right? That'll be a starting point. But Marshall always has like very specifics, and like the bloodbath and 3 a.m. He always has like very small, it seems like small requests, but they're not. It's all he's requesting, but it's like, you don't overlook it. Like, make sure that shit gets done. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of what's in his mind. So in Fast Lane, I did a call with him, and he's like, I just want to, this is way before lyric videos, anything like that. And he's like, I just want all the lyrics to be represented. I guess just being the, it's like, that's like a lyrical gymnastics song. The two of them going back and forth is insane. You know what I mean? So he just wanted the lyrics to be represented, like literally be represented. Like he wanted to see the lyrics and like, they exist in the space around him and whatnot. And so that's all I needed to hear. And I was like, oh, dude, I got you, bro. You know what I mean? And so from there, it was just about dissecting the song, you know what I mean? Top to bottom, every line, like double entendres, triple entendres, like, Royce setting up a joke, Marshall finishing it, like just the amount of like the back and forth of the two of them and the dynamic nature and how they work. Like I just literally broke down every single word. And yeah, we just came up with a scenario. And I remember being on set. I didn't know how to visually explain, like articulate that, like in storyboards or anything without doing the entire video up front, which there was no time. So I just did like this big like diagram with like lines going like, on this line you're going to be doing this, and you're going to be moving over there, and you're going to be doing all this stuff. And I remember you walk on set and you're like, and you go, dude, what is this, A Beautiful Mind? I was like, oh shit. Because it looked like the fucking Beautiful Mind. It was the only way I knew how to properly explain it. It looked like when, like in America, what is it, American Gangster, when Russell Crowe is putting together all the pieces of Denzel's crime syndicate, and it has a wall with all the lines going through it, who's what and all that. That's exactly pretty much what I put together, and you were just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I remember that vaguely, but I also remember shooting in another shitty environment. We were in a warehouse with, I think, literally had dirt floors, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So dirt floor warehouse, again cold, but you needed these like sort of expansive spaces because you were doing these really wide angle shots.
That's right. That's right.
And you needed to be able to have these open spaces so that you could fill them with the words and the graphics that you were going to add in later.
That's correct.
So there's a pretty big leap of faith involved because a lot of this was going to be done in post.
What I realized as we were shooting them is like I had all these cool effects and all these gags, you know, visually that were going to accentuate the performance. But no matter how cool that was going to be, once I started seeing them perform, I was like, we don't even need this shit, man. These guys are just controlling it. You know what I mean? It was the truest definition of MCs, you know what I mean? To just see how they just like take over, you know, a space and just get your attention. I think that's when I really got the lesson of like, this is the mastering of being an MC, you know, especially when having those two together.
Yeah, it's definitely part of it. I mean, you know, the MCing, you know, happens when, you know, when the pen meets the pad and in the vocal booth. But I think that the entertainment aspect of the package, right?
Yeah.
Happens in front of the camera.
Yep.
And, you know, there's guys that are either really good at it or there's people that aren't. Mm-hmm. You know, and if you're really good at it, you're a natural. And you just have this ability to know how to get your performance across, right?
Yep.
In the right way. And a lot of it takes practice and experience, but you know, there's also preparation involved. And particularly for a shoot like Fastlane, you know, they had to sort of plan out what they wanted to do. Like, you know, there's literally a part where, you know, he says, I'm going to kick the ballistics, where he's actually kicking something, right?
Exactly.
It was a soccer ball, right? That like he kicks it and explodes,
ball.
Right?
That's right. That's right.
So
and it was really broken down. I actually thought it was kind of easy. Like it was pretty much just like a laundry list of shots per line. So, but the problem is that, you know, when you're performing a song, you get into this groove and you start performing, and they're spitting so rapidly on that song that, you know, for me to say, okay, we just on this line, I need you to kick a soccer ball. You know, it kind of takes the wind out of the sails sometimes. So it's finding that balance of getting the technical shots you need, but working it in a way where you're not, you know, distracting from the performance.
So moving on from there, and you know, we're not going to have time to go into depth on each video, I don't think, because we would be here for hours and hours. But I'm just going to sort of pick out, you know, some of the highlights moving forward.
Cool.
So after the Bad Meets Evil project, Marshall goes in and he starts working on the Recovery album. Mm-hmm. And the single that you recorded, the first video that you filmed from that was Berzerk.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
We're back, and you're back in Detroit.
Yeah, back in Detroit. For part of it. That's right.
Right.
On that
one,
was
L.A. and Detroit, wasn't it?
It was L.A., Detroit, and New York, actually, because we shot we built the boombox in Detroit. We built the boombox in New York.
That's right.
And from the time we built it, we had 3 days to build that, and so, I mean, I got to give it up to the art department. Like, they literally built, it wasn't sourced. Like, they built that thing, and it was massive, you know, because we wanted it to feel practical. We wanted it to feel like it was inside the space. And the song itself, the essence of it was so, like, you know, it really had that Beasties energy, the LL energy. You know, it just had, like, this like, I don't want to say throwback, but it channeled the energy of an era when visuals really mattered also, you know what I mean? So it was just like, you know, this was going to be a statement video where we had this huge boombox, and Rick Rubin was in the video. He was the hype man, you know what I mean? It was like, this had to be.
And we had Rick in New York, correct?
We had Rick in New York. That's right. And so, yeah, so we built the boombox. Marshall comes out. He's full on, like, he's wearing Dickies and Adidas and a white T-shirt, you know. And I mean, he's really into the character. Oh, and he also went back to the bleach hair on this one. This was when he first went back to blonde. So that was kind of a cool thing too, because everyone had gotten to know him with, you know, dark hair minus a beard, and now he's going back to the blonde. You know, obviously all before the beard. And so it was cool. You're getting so many visuals with this one. So we did that in New York. The other scene we did in New York, which you actually were in, which is probably one of the few cameos you've ever done, where we went to a diner because I wanted to recreate the final blackjack scene in Going Back to Cali with LL, because Rick is actually in that video. So it was like, dude, I got Rick Rubin. We're doing this kind of like, nostalgic vibe. Like, we got to recreate this thing. And of course, Marshall's like, game. You're in there. You got your cigar. We're doing the exact shot, right? We even found a diner that in Queens that's very similar to the one that was used in the video. And then Marshall plays LL, and he does the whole like doubles down on his cards, and that was awesome. I was so proud of that. of shooting that scene.
Yeah, and that was like mad late. Like I think it was like 3 or 4 in the morning by the time we shot that, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And Rick Rubin was a champ, man. Whew. That was
awesome.
An
incredible video, and super, super well executed. And, I think it definitely was, had throwback intentions and, in a good way. Not like, we're going old school, but it was more let's honor and celebrate, this sort of period of time that had such an impact and influence on Marshall.
That's right.
And myself as well, and sort of, figure out how we're going to represent that visually, right?
Yeah,
so
and
there's the Beastie Boys influence, right? Because he wanted to do the So What You Want video.
Yeah, we did that up on the rooftop. That was Detroit, and that's where Kid Rock came and did a cameo based on the lyrics. And yeah, man, it was. And I think to pay honor, I think that's the operative term is honoring an era that like was so special. You know what I mean? Myself included. It was like I grew up on Def Jam. I grew up on fucking Rick Rubin, and everything from Run DMC to Slayer, and it was all kind of like within that wheelhouse. Like in Detroit, we did a scene where we shot it all in reverse, and we were kind of paying homage to Farside, and of course he took the ball and ran with it. I even had to have him spray paint on some plexiglass. He spray painted Berzerk backwards so that when we would reverse the footage, it was like he was erasing it from the thing, but he just, he could pull off anything. He could do anything. It's like nothing was like, nah, I'm not going to do that, or nah, I can't do that, or anything like that. It was just like as long as I had it worked out and it was precise and I knew it would work, and I had the confidence in that, he is always really good about just like going for it, and nailing it. You know what I mean? It's crazy. He's just one of those dudes that's good at everything he does. From my perspective.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed early on when he first started filming videos, because I didn't really have any experience doing music videos either, right? So we're sort of learning as we go at the same time, like me how to manage an artist who's shooting a video and him how to be an artist shooting a video, right?
Right.
But one of the things that has always been there is he wants to put himself into it as much as possible, and he's not going to take the easy way out if he doesn't have to.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
For instance, when we shot Role Model, there was a scene where we're sort of recreating a Harry Houdini escape tank. Right? Where it's like a water tank that you hang upside down in, and I think Houdini was like in a straitjacket.
Yeah.
And, he figures out how to get out of this like water torture chamber tank as a magic trick.
Right.
So we had Marshall do it, and Marshall didn't want a double to do it. He wanted to do it himself. So he went in that tank himself,
crazy. Yeah.
upside down or whatever it was. And I knew from back then, I was like, okay, he's gonna put himself in position to do what he thinks is best for the product, and he's gonna sacrifice his comfort or potential well-being in order to get this done.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So and we're not talking anything crazy, but he certainly is willing to do his own stunts to an extent, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Which he absolutely has done throughout time, as you well know.
Definitely.
So we go through Berzerk, and during some of this time, you're also doing some other stuff for us. You do the Slaughterhouse videos for My Life, Throw It Away. You do a Yellow Wolf video for Let's Roll, and also there was some some visuals that you did for ESPN when we did some college football promos.
That's when he was on TV and he did that weird look around and everyone was like, what's wrong with like he knew what the fuck he was doing.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
He was in the booth with Kirk Herbstreit, and I think it was Brent Musburger, right?
Yes.
And he's they're asking him questions, and he gets that face that he does in the Berzerk video where he's like, and people can't see me right now, but it's like that face where he looks like he's high.
Yeah.
And
just looking around
so
like he's disoriented.
we talked about this before. Prior to him going in the booth, he's like, man, I've never done this before. Like, I don't know how am I going to make this interesting? It's like a football game, and like they're interviewing me, and I'm not a football player, and it's weird. And I was like, why don't you just go do something that's fun? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, it doesn't matter. Just go do something that you think is going to be fun or interesting, and that, you know, people are going to talk about. And he's like, really? He's like, can I go for it? And I was like, listen, I mean, you know, within reason. And obviously, you know, me knowing what I know about him, he only needs like a little bit of permission, and he'll go full on, right?
That's right.
So he was like, okay, cool. I got it. I think I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Oh
so I'm in the room, like, you know, behind the camera in this booth, and I see him doing it. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, people are going to think he's high again. Yeah. And sure enough, the next day, Eminem relapsed, and you know, he was just fucking around. Yeah, obviously,
exactly. It's fucking hilarious.
But you know, the best was their expressions, and particularly Herbstreit, because I think Herbstreit knew what was going on. Yeah. And I think he knew that he was fucking with them. Right. But he was a really good sport about it.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. But what's crazy is, like, when he said that to you, like, I know what I'm going to do, he had already, because we had already shot the video, I believe, and he was doing that in the video, you know what I mean? Especially when we were doing, like, the Beasties headshot vibe. And you know, come to find out, like, he gets on these things, like, he'll do something like that. But on set, that was just like a funny thing. But then, and I didn't put it together when he actually did it on the broadcast, you know, it was hilarious. But then it's like when I start going back and I'm still editing, it's like, oh shit, he's connecting the dots, man. You know what I mean? He's like, you know, there's always a connective tissue there that goes with it, that going back to what I was saying about, like, carrying over besides just the song or the video, like there's this, like, DNA that extends onwards. And so, you know, he's crazy like a fox that way. You know what I mean? He knew what he was doing, because he did it on SNL too, because him and Rick did the SNL performance.
Yeah, they did Berzerk on SNL as well, yeah.
And he was doing it on there too. It was awesome.
And there he goes again, doing it again. So another thing you mentioned earlier that you've done for us and for Marshall in the past is there was the tour visuals. So when we have, you know, these giant LED screens on tour and you see video content on them that's not live, well, sometimes it's live, but sometimes it's computer generated graphics and things like that. James was behind a lot of that. And, you know, I think there was a point where it was funny. We reconnected through a third party because I hadn't, for whatever reason, thought about you guys to do that. Right. And I was talking to a third party about, you know, Darren Romanelli, right? And I was like, I really need somebody to create these visuals. And he was like, I got somebody. And he was like, here's this guy. And he's like, it's his company, Syndrome, and it's James Larese. And I was like, wait a minute, I know James very well. Yeah. And he's like, oh, well, you don't need me then. Just go, you know, do it directly with him. So we reconnected on that stuff. Yeah. And I think you did a lot of work in a short period of time. Do you remember those circumstances?
I do. It was I'll say this. Okay. Doing those tour visuals is where I fell in love with Detroit. Like, I fell in love with it as my own connection beyond, like, I go here to work because Eminem's here. Like, I just fell in love with the city. And the reason is because in lieu of doing just, like, visual graphics and stuff, like, we wanted to ground it in live action footage, you know, shoot landmarks. And, like, basically it was I believe it was the tour where his stage was the big E, the backwards E, and that was all, it was like an LED screen. So we had to shoot it very strategically because it had to fit within this template on the stage. And so, you know, we went, I had a laundry list of things to shoot, and you're like, yo, I'm gonna hook you up with my boy. He's gonna show you around. He's a photographer. He does all this stuff, and that was the first time I met JD, and he basically just took me to all the spots. The first thing we did was we snuck into a building in downtown. It was like 13 stories or something like that, and we snuck in right before sunrise so that we could get the sunrise overseeing the city, which was insane. And it was crazy to get up there. It was like an episode, a scene out of the Goonies or something. Like we were jumping over steps and traversing our way up and whatnot. And even the guy carrying the camera, he ended up throwing up at one point. Like it was gnarly. But we got up there and we got the shot, and it was insane. And I just remember looking at JD. He's like, I told you, bro. It was so cool. And it was just that I spent, I think, 3 or 4 days just running around Detroit, Belle Isle to, like the area that like Diana Ross grew up in, and, like just all over.
Motown Museum.
Yeah. And Motown Museum.
Did you go to the train station as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what's funny is this was what, 2010 when I did that? So Detroit looked way different back then, you know what I mean? And it was
not in a good way.
And not in a good way.
Depending upon your taste.
Hence why all of our
to photograph and film the ruins, then that was your time period to do it.
That's right. But going back to what you're saying about all the locations, to me it was like, to shoot at those places is amazing because it just doesn't feel like any other place in America, but it is very Americana because there's like, it's old factories and it's old, it's what drove the motor industry for so many years. And so you find these things, I love scouting because like I'd find rave flyers from just before the year 2000, like in the upper deck of a, some venue or something like that. It was just so much stuff to find that hadn't been touched in years, which was crazy. And that's kind of what I got out of that experience was like, I got to see Detroit. Like I got to see Detroit without having to, worry about going to set and shooting an artist and all that stuff. Like this was just us from morning to sunset, just going around, shooting it and getting the history of it. That was my tour, right? Like, that's when I saw the shelter. Yeah. That's when I saw everything. You know what I mean? I went to the trailer park. That's when I saw the Dresden House for the first time. Like all of that type of stuff. And it was just like, I left there like, I was a different person when I left there.
Did that experience like sort of inform your thoughts about how you were going to film Detroit moving forward? Because it wasn't the last time that you were filming there, right? So you did the Shady 15 Cypher there. You did the
we did the Quiet Storm. We shot Quiet
Storms.
And,
that freestyle video and the Detroit versus Everybody video as well.
Yep.
So I mean, all of that stuff probably, you gained this sort of library of knowledge of different textures
but
in
also,
the city, and you probably went back to some of it.
100%. And also because I got to understand the city not just from like an outsider coming in, like, I hate the term urban. What is it? Urban ruins people use. They have tours and
ruin porn.
Yeah, or whatever. They go around and they go on tours to look at all the old buildings and whatnot. But what I got from that experience was that like I got to know what a Detroiter is. You know what I mean? And like the understanding of like the people of Detroit and like who they were and how fucking loyal and cool and like. It reminded me of how a New Yorker is, you know what I mean? And a big part of that was because of my guide, JD taking me around was like, I just got to see a sense of who the people were. And if this is something where I'm going to come, and it was also known that, if M doesn't have to leave Detroit, he's not going to. So, I just was like, I can't like fake the funk on this. Like, I gotta really understand the city because it showed me nothing but love. I want to be as authentic as possible without trying to act like I'm from there or anything like that. But I feel like the city is a character in everything he does, so that can't be an afterthought. Hence Detroit versus Everybody,
That particularly shines in that video. And I think that it's good that you pointed that out because there have been other people that have come to Detroit to shoot and sort of use the city as a character in the video or as, main texture or backdrop of the video. And unless you're coming from the right place and you really want to understand it, and you really want to embrace it and use it for, a good purpose or an artistic purpose, it can come across as inauthentic and exploitative.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. 100%.
And that's the absolute last thing that we would ever do when it comes to filming our city.
That's right.
So anybody who's come in there and it hasn't felt like completely authentic, or they were going at it from the right angles or for the right reasons and connecting with the right people, they just never came back.
Yeah.
They just weren't welcome back.
Yeah.
So you've been back many, many times.
That's right.
So
and look,
you're obviously hitting it at the right angle.
I live between, LA's my home. I currently live in New York with my family. So I'm back and forth between LA and New York all the time. But my third city is Detroit, like 100%. And I can say that very confidently after having a good 15 years of being there, and have some of my best friends that live there to this day, and the relationships that I've formed and all that, it's just, and a lot of like very important moments in my life have taken place there, so I have this feeling for Detroit, this love for Detroit that like I just always want to rep as hard as I can for the city, because the other thing is, like, you never want to see an Eminem video and like you just said, it feel not authentic. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, that feels kind of weird or whatever, it's just like, I always look at 8 Mile, the movie, was the North Star of that city. And I know it was telling a story, and so therefore it was very specific to parts of the city. But the feeling that I got when I first watched that movie, and then after being there and actually working there and being at the places that had been in that film, and working with people that had, like, crew members that have been on that film, stuff like that, like, that's the goal. You want to really thrive to capture this city in a way that people can feel pride,
Yeah, for sure. So to move forward, you filmed a couple more that were, shot in Detroit, through actually a bunch more that were shot in Detroit, but the Lucky You video with Joyner Lucas, the Framed video, the video for Fall.
Yep.
And then, we move into some of the more modern times and things, but one of them was something that we all approached with a great degree of seriousness and wanted to make sure that we were telling the story right and getting the visuals right for how Marshall was approaching this topic, and through the song was the video for Darkness.
Yeah.
So Darkness was from Music to Be Murdered By, and that was 2020 was when we shot that. So what do you remember about that set of circumstances? Because I think, we put you in a difficult situation in the sense that very difficult topic, and we come to you with, this thing that Marshall created, and we say, hey, we need a visual for this.
Right.
And I would have ran the other way, but, you came up with something brilliant. So what was going through your mind?
I mean, at this point, I have a history with you guys. Now I've kind of gotten to know you as, human beings and not just like a client and whatnot. And the one thing I knew at that point is that I aligned with you guys across the board, right? So, there was never a job where I was like, fuck, I'm not feeling this. Like, I don't feel that way or anything like that. It was never, ever like that. Anything was shady. So it's funny, for being called Shady is the most non-shady people in the world. But anything with Marshall, it's never on the surface. Like what he says may sound, sometimes it comes off and it sounds a certain way, but there's always another meaning behind it, or an additional meaning. And in this case, the song, to me, it's one of the most genius songs he's ever written, because of how he tells this story is so vivid, and he leads you down one path and then he totally flips it. And that path is that you think he is relapsing. Like, this song, you feel he is completely relapsing. But then there's this parallel of, like, these weird little hints of talking about, like, bullets or guns or crowds and all this stuff. And
Yeah, there's flashes of like violence and weaponry.
What happens is he leads you down one path only to switch it up, and then to see that there's this parallel story going on, that this is actually documenting the perspective from the shooter of the Vegas shooting, which at the time I think was the large mass shooting in America. When I saw that or heard it, I saw very vividly what needed to how it needed to be told, and there was a lot of conversations that we had between, we don't want to this is not trying to glorify the shooter's perspective or anything like that. However, in order to understand why someone does something, you kind of have to understand who they are, right? And you have to understand the process. I think like so many times they're quick to just, this person's bad, just throw them away. They don't try to get into the mind to maybe try to either not necessarily help him, but maybe avoid another person like him in the future, educate themselves on this behavior. And so,
yeah, it was meant to be, I think it was critical of the circumstances that would allow something like this to exist in this country.
Exactly.
Right. I think that's the perspective that he was trying to paint. But in order to do that, he wanted to go inside of the mind of the monster.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. Absolutely.
So I think you did an excellent job of setting that up, but there were certain lines that we just weren't going to cross, and I think that's for the better.
Yeah, for sure.
Great piece of art with a great accompanying visual for sure. So after Darkness, I think the Rainy Days video with Boogie, the Caterpillar video with Royce, and the Homicide video with Logic, all of which were entirely different concepts and approaches. What do you remember about the Caterpillar video?
I love those two together, man. Like, I like duos. You know what I mean? Maybe it goes back to Run DMC or whatever, but like,
right, because it's really Bad Meets Evil. It's a Royce song with Eminem on it on Royce's album, but that's Bad Meets Evil.
And,
right?
And no matter who song it is, to me, it's always Bad Meets Evil. You know what I mean? And so I just knew that when you have the two of them. Whereas the first one, when we did Fastlane, I was already prepared with smoke and mirrors, and a lot of stuff was going to happen anyways. And it was that time when I discovered that, like, well, you don't need, they are hip hop. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to like show anything or, around them to dress that up. Like, you really, I always knew if I was going to do this again with them, I wanted to do like a White Psych. I wanted to do something that was just very minimal and let them rock. You know what I mean? And so when Caterpillar came, the song is incredible, and metaphorically, the use of Caterpillar and how that works and the way that the two of them play off is really amazing. And I will say the only difference with it being a Royce-led song or a song that's on Royce's album is he had two verses and then Marshall has one, as opposed to like Marshall doing two and then like a guest having one. So it was dope to
he did the chorus too, right?
That was, I think his name's King Green. I forget there was a guy that did the chorus. I'm sorry, his name escapes me.
Right.
I want to say it's Green, but in any case, it was, so we did it as far as like what I was saying, like a White Psych. I definitely wanted to do some enhancements, but I kind of wanted to do an updated version of Fastlane. You know what I mean? Because when we did Fastlane, it was older and, I had different styles and, things like that. And so this one, I wanted something that was a bit more textural and it didn't compete with their performance. So when we were on set, they got into this position. Marshall's just, he's always clowning around. Like, he's always just being, he's 12 or he's 8 or whatever. If the camera's, focused on his nuts, he's going to grab his nuts or he's going to moon you or, Anyways, we're about to do a take, and he's just standing there. Royce, it's like a wide shot. Royce is in position, and Marshall just stands there, and he's like frozen. He's like not moving. And we just started laughing and kind of playing around. And then it was like, let's just do this. Like, all right, Marshall, don't move until it's your part. Like, just stay in that exact same position. And then Royce, you
stay still.
You do your thing, Royce. You perform. Marshall, you just stay there. And then Royce, when you're done, you go into your position, and then Marshall's going to start. Let's just fucking try it, right? So we did, and we did.
There's like a certain there's like a b-boy routine element to
That's
that,
right.
right?
That's
It'd be like
right.
a dance routine, like you would do bust your moves and then like go off into your stance.
Exactly.
And then the other guy would go.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was so cool. Like I remember after we did that in one take. Like we did obviously a bunch of other takes, but that particular thing we did in one take. It's one of those things you can only do in one take, because once you got it, you try to do it again, you're just trying to do what you just did. You got to get it on that first one, and that's what we did.
In the Homicide video, tell me about what we had to do, because there's a very specific thing that we had to pull off that was not easy to pull off.
Yes, it was fun. That one was really fun, and it could only be pulled off if the artists were down, and which they were. You know, it was my first time working with Logic. And, you know, look, man, I'm partial. I like MCs and I like lyricists, and I like people that are still, you know, they still got that boom bap, you know, beat in their heart and whatnot. And Logic, I feel like, is one of those type of dudes, you know, people that are lyricists, that treat it like LeBron treats basketball. You know what I mean? I love that, because that just makes me want to try that much harder. So anyways, I believe at the time you were running Def Jam. I think
Yes.
that was the case. You were on Def Jam. Logic was on Def Jam. Logic had a single, but the idea was, I guess, for some reason we weren't able to. Marshall wasn't going to be in the video, but this is another banger, and it's like, you know, the verses are insane. So if he wasn't going to be in the video, we had to do something that was going to represent his verse in a way that kept your interest throughout the entire time. I don't even know how long his verse is, but I think it's a couple of minutes. And at the time, the comedian Chris D'Elia was on Instagram doing impersonations of Marshall, and they were kind of shitty, but they were like almost so shitty that they were amazing, because he was getting the cadence, and he was getting something that you just couldn't. People that tried to act like Marshall couldn't get. He was getting it, maybe because he wasn't really trying, but it worked, and it was funny.
He keyed in on a certain aspect of the way Marshall was rapping at the time, and I think particularly in his freestyles, that was funny.
Exactly.
Right? The way he reproduced
100%.
it was definitely humorous.
So because we didn't have Marshall, we came up with this idea where Logic's in the studio, and Paul calls Logic on the phone and explains to Logic that Marshall's not going to be able to be in the video. He's on one, he's doing something, he's off, you know, doing whatever, but he's not going to be available. So Logic's like, fuck. Meanwhile, we see one of Logic's like day-to-day managers like walking into the studio behind him and hearing your voice on the phone talking to Logic, telling him that Marshall's not going to be in the video. And he obviously already knows this and was about to tell Logic. And he's like, fuck. All right. So then he sits down. You get off the phone. Logic looks at his manager like, what the fuck, dude? He's not going to be in here? And so the day-to-day manager then goes into this story of like, well, we don't have him, but we're going to get him a body double, and you won't ever know. And Logic's like, what the fuck? That's stupid. And then he's like, that's okay. We got a body double for you, too, because now it won't look weird that only one person has a body double. You know, it's just silly.
Right.
As silly as it sounds, that shit happens every day. You know what I mean? Like, videos are always that. It's just like, you got to make it work. It's all problem solving. It's like, okay. And I think that's where the best creativity comes from. So we were kind of mocking what happens all the time anyways in music. So then he's like, okay, well, who are you going to get for me? And he's like, all right, ready? We're going to get Squints from The Sandlot, which was a meme that, you know, there's this joke that, you know, Logic and Squints as a child in The Sandlot look very similar. And so the fact that we actually got him for the video, which was awesome. So he's like, okay, all right, and get him on the phone, and, you know, they have this conversation, a little banter, and it's kind of funny. And then Logic's like, all right, okay, I see you got Squints for me, but who you got for Marshall? And he's like, that's when they make a phone call, and Chris D'Elia picks up the phone, and we put a wig on Chris that looks like his real hair, because we put another wig, a yellow wig on him that looked like Marshall, so he could rip off his fake real hair to reveal Marshall's wig. And that was the whole vibe. Right. And we also made him a serial killer. Like, he was just, He's awesome, man. I mean, he was so good.
And then at the end, we do get a cameo from Marshall.
That's right. So all goes through the video. You know, they watch the performances, whatever, and meanwhile, Logic's in the studio watching all this happen. And he's like, "Wow, this is really cool." And then he gets a phone call, and it's from Marshall, and it's a text, and it says, "Dahlia doesn't play me, I play Dahlia," and so Logic and his manager is like, what's that mean? And then we go to a shot of now Marshall dressed up like Chris D'Elia in the driver's seat of a car, remaking the original video that Chris D'Elia made, making light of Eminem's performance. But now Marshall,
so this is just as meta as can be,
dude. It's the most meta, down to the fact that Marshall had a beard, and we put another beard over his beard because the beard was too big. The beard was too big, so we made a smaller beard over his big beard. It was awesome. Yeah, and so then
they had to pack down his beard with like paste, and then put like a fake skin over it, and then apply a beard to the fake skin.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And
then
insane. Give him a wig.
And then give him a wig and glasses. So he looks just like Dahlia, and now he's in the driver's seat.
Right.
And we're in the parking lot of his studio. Marshall's sitting there. I used my iPhone. If you look at the reflection in his glasses on that shot, you see me holding the phone. It's Marshall, myself. I brought a DP, and I remember you're like, "Why are you even here, man?" Because we didn't even have a camera. And then you and maybe Fish or something, and we do the performance. But here's the best part. The best part is that Marshall's such a professional, and he's so precise with everything he does that he memorized Chris D'Elia's rap, a mumble rap that it doesn't mean anything, and it uses weird words that rhyme out of weird sections.
Like not even weird. It's like part of it's gibberish.
And Marshall memorized it to a T. So he was doing a performance of Chris making fun of him, and I don't know. Like you said, it's as meta as it. That's the most meta shit I've ever done. But it was awesome. Yeah. And I think he did it in the first take, but we got another one just for safety. But yeah, man, it was amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that, we're probably getting close to the time where it makes sense to discuss some of the most recent things. You did the Higher video after that, which was great. And then, you did a Sway interview for us, which was awesome. But I guess the most recent thing is in a sense, part of one of the songs that's definitely on Curtain Call 2, is created for Curtain Call 2, is this song with Snoop Dogg from the D to the LBC.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely.
So again, another set of circumstances where if somebody threw this idea or pitched this idea to me, I probably would have said, go talk to somebody else because I don't know how I'm going to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
But the idea was, hey, we want to shoot this video, and it's going to be Marshall and Snoop, but they're going to turn into these Bored Ape Yacht Club characters, and they're going to be cartoons in part of the video, and they want to be in it, but they want animation in it a lot, and go figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. But Marshall did have the premise of wanting to be, because he talks about it in the song, smoked out by Snoop and his presence and his self-medication process, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of amazing aspects that went into creating this, leading up to Snoop arriving in Detroit with, a blunt the size of his arm, as Marshall puts it in the song, right?
Yeah, wrapped around a baby
tell
jar.
me about exactly. So yeah, it was literally they call it the tip, right?
Yeah.
The tip of the pre-roll was a baby food jar with one of the ends sawed off.
Yeah.
Right?
It was 28 grams. The blunt was
like
20
a glass
grams.
tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, listen, I have been around a lot of weed. I used to manage Cypress Hill. I know what weed looks like. I know what giant bongs look like.
Yeah.
I know what giant joints look like. That was one of the bigger ones. I'm going to be honest. It's not the biggest I've seen.
Yeah.
B-Real
Right.
had a joint that was bigger.
Yeah.
But the difference is Snoop managed to smoke on that thing the entire day
Yeah.
that we were filming.
That
Right?
was not, like he says, this ain't no Hollywood weed. This is the real, that thing that killed John Wayne. You know what I mean? It was like, it was, that's all he needed for the day. You know what I mean? Like he said,
Yeah.
it was 28 grams. So, you know, he probably would smoke that in individual blunts throughout a day, or, you know, whatever, a shoot and whatnot. But he just had this one. He couldn't even hold it like between two fingers or whatever. He literally had to like, he had to wrap his hand around it just to smoke it.
So tell me about the idea and, you know, how it was developed, because you took it to a whole new place, a whole different place other than what I imagined. I thought it was just going to be like this level of cartoonery, and, you know, it was just going to be this sort of
Right.
one style, two-dimensional, flat
Yeah.
illustration. But you brought it to a whole different place with the team that you brought on board.
Yeah.
Just give us a quick idea of what caused you to bring it to the direction that you did.
Well, first of all, it's M and Snoop. Take it back to the music. It was M and Snoop, and yes, they've been on songs before, but they've never had a single like this. You know what I mean? And the two of them together and spitting, and Snoop's verse is ridiculous. Like it's insane. So I mean, Marshall's is obviously incredible, you know, but like Snoop is really on some shit on this one. So it had to be something special, you know what I mean? And going back to what I was saying about duos, I love duos, you know, and so, you know, to have these two together is, you know, it's a unicorn project, right? So it was like I had to go hard, you know what I mean? And because they're a duo and they are who they are, it had to be something fun, you know? And the whole, like you said, the whole thing playing back to the lyrics and the stories that Marshall's able to create so vividly. You know, the song actually says, like, you know, they're in the studio together. He's like, you know, Snoop's getting so high, it's making him high, basically. I'm not saying that very well, but
Yeah, he's basically being subjected to the
Yes,
smoke
yeah.
from contact.
Yeah.
Snoop was in the studio. Marshall couldn't see him because he was in the booth.
Right.
And Snoop's like intentionally blowing smoke
Yeah.
through the ductwork.
Exactly.
To get to Marshall when he's in the booth fucking with him.
the thing was too, it was like, you know, and this is something I think the story landed where it did because that was one of the things about, you know, in music now, it's like, you know, it's cool to have like intros and, you know, break the song and have outros and whatnot. But, you know, now with the algorithms and the way YouTube functions, it's like, you know, people's attention span, if you don't get them in like 10 seconds, they're going to turn the channel. You know what I mean? They're just going to turn it off. So we needed to convey the idea of like M's about to lay a track and Snoop is getting him high, but he's not telling him he's getting high. You know what I mean? Like we had to convey that in like 10 seconds. And so I think we landed on that pretty well. I kind of just wrote out the premise and then we would just freestyle and be off camera, like feeding Snoop lines. And I mean, it was awesome. It was super fun. It's how I imagine like SNL doing it, I guess, in certain ways. And then it was like, you know, look, if they're going to animate, we got to make it different. And so there's an animation company, like a traditional animation company made up of illustrators and cell animators by the name of Nathan Love. I should give them a shout out because they did all the visuals, and I wanted to make this feel cartoon, you know, like, but not just animated. I wanted to create a metaverse where we took their Bored Ape characters and we translated them into various styles. I wanted to do like Saturday morning cartoons look. I wanted to do something more like the Gorillas, you know. I wanted to do something very anime, something very traditional comic book. You know, I also know Marshall's a big fan of comics, as am I, and so you know, it couldn't just be some generic comic book bullshit. Like we had to really come correct with it. And
Right.
so, you know, that was the thing. I came up with all these scenarios, and then I used that as a blueprint for then this team of artists to take and just inject with steroids and come on board, because I wanted to make sure that it had the essence of where Snoop's from. You know what I mean? It had to have a shot of like, you know, the girl on the porch braiding his hair, you know, like an old flashback to like Gin and Juice or whatever. You know what I mean? We needed to have like his DNA in that animation. Otherwise, I don't think it would have worked. I think otherwise it would have just felt very flat and soulless.
Yeah. One of the things that I really appreciated about it is the animation was very layered and it was very detailed, but the thing I think that really carried it was in perpetual motion. right? The screen was always moving. There was nothing still ever happening. And I think that's what really made it work, because if it would have just been more static shots or things that were locked off and they weren't always traveling like they were, I think that people might have lost interest.
Yeah.
Because it's when you're looking at a video and you want to see the guys who are rapping, the stars, and you're giving them animated apes instead, right? It's tough to keep people engaged. And I think that sort of sense of motion and the constant changing of styles between the different types of animation are what I think captivates the audience to this. And we know it worked because it's got a tremendous amount of views, but we also just got the VMA nominations for Best Hip Hop,
That's right? Yep, absolutely.
So congratulations on that.
I appreciate that. I'm really proud of it because I feel like this with every project I do with you guys is that this is what it looks like when you're in sync directly with the artist, management, label, everyone. You got the trust. You got it's not a tug of war. It's not a back and forth of trying, one person trying to get their idea across and the other, or the politics and the tape. It's like there's no bullshit on a Shady project. We just we go in. This is what we're gonna do. It's got to be dope, and I love that, man. I thrive for that because I think that's the big swing only mentality. You know what I mean? It's why else would we do this? I
mean, listen, we've been doing this for since 2008. Right? So almost 15 years now.
Yeah, man.
It's a long time. I think that we've done a good job of covering a lot of it here today. You moved during this process from LA to New York. That, must be crazy for you. And, I just want to say on behalf of myself and Marshall and, the company and all the people we worked with, we're lucky to have you as a part of what we've been able to accomplish in these records and all the things outside of it that you were involved in leading up to the release of this Curtain Call 2. This is to us, it's like the, bookending this sort of second phase of Marshall's career, right?
Yeah, man.
Which is, the albums up to now. So, you've been a big part of that, and that's why you're here today on Paul Pod. And again, thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for the hats that you wear. Like the one you're wearing today. And, we are thrilled to have you, and we're looking forward to another 15 years, and we'll be sitting here, Curtain Call 3.
Yeah, man.
Might be, we'll look a lot older than we do now. We'll do a good job of holding it together.
We'll be triple OGs by then.
Yeah, 15 years from now might be a different story. But anyway, James Larese, thank you so much.
Yo, man,
for joining us.
I gotta just say too, man, it's just you guys have, I've learned so much from the process of working with you guys, and I mean, I can't even put into words what it has done for me and how it's changed my life, and just to forge these relationships to the point where it's it goes beyond just having, collecting a check. I feel the love in Shady. I feel the love in Detroit. I feel, it's just I have this connection that it's priceless, man. And I owe it all to you guys, man. I really, really appreciate everything. And I do know that you're, to an extent, you're only as good as your last gig or whatever, and you can never get too comfortable. And I think that's something that leads to being able to get that call again, is just know that you have to bring it every time, man. Every time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And no matter what.
You have to come with that quality, for sure.
And if the music's on that level, and you're being, blessed to put a visual to that song, it's you gotta go there with it, and you gotta really try it all. And you guys have allowed for that freedom, and I can't ever thank you guys enough. So thanks.
Well, hey, man, you said it all, and we are very, very glad to have had the experience today on Paul Pod and with you as a creative and a part of the team. And I think that's what you're trying to describe. It's not just a gun for hire.
Yeah.
You're part of the team, and you keep delivering, which is why you keep coming back. Ladies and gentlemen, James Larese on Paul Pod. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time.
Peace.
You gotta be fucking kidding me.